Okay, good morning, everyone. Everyone's still on a high from the dinner the other night. It was so beautiful and so appropriate and so touching. And I think Yanis deserves so much more. And the aim of what he deserves, kavod-wise, I think was achieved and accomplished from the other night. We are beginning chapter 5 of Shmuel Beis, where things really now change dramatically. Shaul is gone, right? That was the end of Shmuel Aleph. Ishbosheth, his son, not the way David or we would have wanted, also is not there anymore. Avner, his biggest advocate, is also not there. So now what's going to happen next, right? Politically, nationally, how are the people going to respond? Do they trust David HaMelech now that he wasn't involved in the murder of Ishbosheth and Avner? Or are they going to be suspicious of him? And how is this going to help us move the narrative forward of the Jewish people? Vayavohu kol shiftei Yisrael el David Chevrona. Representatives of every single tribe of the Jewish people go to David, and they say to him, Vayomru le'mor, they say all together, with one thought, they come together, biyachad, unified. Hinenu atzmacha uvisarcha anachnu. We are your brothers. We are your flesh. We are your mishpacha. Don't consider it that Shevet Yehuda is separate than all of us. We want to be united. Gam etzmol, gam sholshom, b'hiyo Shaul melech aleinu. Even when Shaul was king, you knew and we knew that we wanted you. We always wanted you. Ata ha'isa hamotzi v'hamevi es Yisrael. You were maybe it doesn't translate this way exactly, but you were the mover and shaker of the Jewish people. You captured the hearts and the minds of us by being our leader, being our warrior, and being our protector. Vayomer Hashem lecha. And we know that God said to you, again, they don't really know this, but they have a feeling, they have an intuition that Hashem has chosen David as king over all the Jewish people. Right? We know this because it happened privately in a small little group, Shmuel and David, but they could tell that Hashem is with David HaMelech. Atat tir'es ami es Yisrael. You are going to be the shepherd over the Jewish people. V'atatia lenagid al Yisrael. And you will be their leader. They express the two roles of leadership, of Jewish leadership. One is a shepherd. A shepherd takes care of, it's sensitive and care to the sheep, right? You have to take care of each and every one of the flock in a very, very, what? Like Moshe, in a very nurturing way. David himself was also a shepherd. All of our great leaders started off, right? In America, they go to Harvard. In Israel, they're shepherds. And, right, you're a shepherd first and foremost, which really shows the kind nature and the loving and the nurturing role that they play within Am Yisrael. But you're also our Nagid. Nagid comes from the word neged, against. Another role of a leader is to push the people, make them feel uncomfortable from time to time. It's not to say everything's always okay, because that's not a good leader. That's not a Jewish leader. That's not how things work. You need to say with honesty and earnestness, come on, guys, you can do better. You can do better. So we need you as our king, as a roeh, and as a nagid. Vayavohu kol ziknei Yisrael el hamelech Chevrona, and they go to him to Chevron. Chevron is where David is residing. Vayichros lahem hamelech David bris bechevron lifnei Hashem. And they made a bris, a covenant with David. Right?
Who's they?
Who's they? Who's they? We don't know their names. Right. This is like the elders of the generation, the representatives of the Jewish people. It's not the Nasiya. Actually, the truth is the Nasiim are not really mentioned once we enter Eretz Israel, but the old guard, right? The delegation. Yeah. The Radak addresses here that originally it was Kol Shiftei Yisrael, and now it's Ziknei Yisrael. Comes from that. Maybe there were two different groups. One was maybe one type of representation, and now this group is coming in a more of a political representative, like more of a bureaucratic way that you guys, right? We're gonna go enter a covenant together. That's what leadership is, and we're gonna make you king over all of us. But Yimshechu as David Lamelech HaYisrael. And they anointed him over the Jewish people, right? This is the second time that David is anointed, right? We know that he was already anointed, and now it's done very privately, and then it's done again very publicly. The truth is, this is not the first time that you see two anointings. When Yehoshua, speaking about Yehoshua, when Yehoshua was appointed as Moshe's successor, two things happened. First, Moshe, in a very private moment, put his hands on Yehoshua's head, gave him smicha, and said, "You're going to take over for me." And then he was placed in front of Kol Yisrael, or the Ziknei Yisrael. And Moshe then declared, he's the man. Meaning, there are two different things that were done and accomplished, and both are necessary. There's like the private Mesorah, that Shmuel giving that to David, and then there's a public acceptance. Both are needed, really, and we're going to see them. We're going to see maybe this is the last time this is really going to happen historically. The Rambam has this huge chiddush, which created a lot of historical problems in Tzfat, I believe, in the 1500s. The Rambam was not living in Tzfat in the 1500s. If you're confused. But the Rambam has an opinion that says that if you want to reinstitute smicha, I don't really have smicha. Any rabbi in our generation doesn't really have smicha. Why is that? Smicha is really the Mesorah from Moshe Rabbeinu to Yehoshua from generation to generation. At one point, that was completely, the Romans identified who the last few people were that had that uninterrupted smicha from Moshe Rabbeinu, and they killed them all. They killed all those rabbis. What do we have today? And the Gemara talks about this. The Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin talks about this. The Gemara says what rabbis have today is a heter lahoros. You have permission, right, with the right testing and training and learning, etc. You have a heter to give psak halacha in certain areas of halacha. The most basic, like in the YU world, is yore, right? That's yoredeya. That's the halachas of kashrus and things, avelos, nida, all in that area. It's a second smicha you can get from YU. That's called what? Yadin. Why it's called Yadin? The language comes from the Gemara. Because the people would say, Yadin, can he judge? Yadin, yes, he can judge. Yora, he can render a psak? Yora, yes, he can. But that's where it comes from. It's language from the Gemara. It's not like it was like a typo like many, many years ago. So that's what everyone has today. The Rambam says that this Mesorah and this, so why is smicha important? Why is that uninterrupted smicha important? With that, you can adjudicate cases in a different level. In Eretz Israel, there could be adjudication of certain punishments, for example, of Malchus and maybe even Mises based in to a certain degree. And why is that important? We don't want that, no? So that's important because people can get the the kapara and the tshuva that they need in this world, and the shama doesn't have to go through extra, cleansing processes in the next world. So the Moranos who lived in Spain felt like they lived their lives, just with a lot of regret. There were things that they were forced to do, and they wanted some type of, tshuva for what they did. Which leads us, a lot of people from Spain, they moved to different areas. Some obviously stayed and pretended to be Jews pretended to be Christians on the outside and Jews on the inside. But then a lot of people left. People went to Italy, and a lot of Jews went to Tzfat. Tzfat was one of the locations that people went to. And the Rambam had this opinion that if Rov Chachmei Israel get together to declare someone as a rabbi, then that becomes part of the uninterrupted Masorah for Moshe Rabbeinu, and they get the real smicha. And the chief rabbi of Tzfat at the time was somebody by the name of the Ma'aribe Rav. That name does not sound so familiar to us, but other rabbis who lived in Tzfat at the time were more familiar. Who is that? Rav Yosef Karo lived there, and others who if you go to this old cemetery in Tzfat, you're familiar with a lot of the names. So he tried to institute this in Tzfat, which was Yerushalayim at the time. There was very little Torah learning there. The main was there. So he tried to institute this and got a lot of pushback, a lot. Because no one agrees with the Rambam in this case. And rabbis said, hello, you wanted every rabbi representation of rabbis around the world. You didn't invite me. Like, hello, what about me? What about the chief rabbi of Yerushalayim at the time was not included, and the Rabaz maybe was one of the greatest rabbis of the time. He was a rabbi in Egypt, Cairo, at the time, was not invited. And why? Because he vehemently disagreed with this psak, and wrote a sefer disproving this opinion of the Rambam. Rabbi Rav Shechter, in one of his Sfarim, has a whole essay on smicha, the historic aspects of smicha and like the halachic aspects. So he quotes Rabbi Soloveitchik. Where did this come from? The Rav wanted to know where did the Rambam get this. It's a nice idea, but you need a proof. One of the biggest problems and knocks on the Rambam's Sfarim, the Mishnah Torah, is that there are never any sources for anything. He didn't write down the Markowitz, not even a pasuk. I mean, if you know enough about the Tanakh, you can figure out where it is. And most of the commentaries on the Rambam, and there are numerous commentaries in the Rambam, they all, the main goal is really to find a Mar Makom for the Rambam. Most notably in our generation, Rav Chaim Kanievsky wrote a sefer just on this, where the other, Mefarshim didn't. He tried to find sources. So this one is really left unknown. Where would the Rambam get this idea from? So Rabbi Soloveitchik suggested a brilliant suggestion that he got it from the Chumash itself. That he said that really there are two Masorahs that Moshe gave to Yoshua. First was the private smicha, and the second was the public acceptance from the Zikanim. Right, and that is a form of smicha. And that's where the Rambam got this from. Maybe they're like two separate. You don't need both, but one within itself would be enough to recreate this halachic smicha. Right? And we see that's really what's happening here. The Zakanim are called in, and David now becomes king, right? Not because he got the Masorah from Shmuel Hanavi, the previous leader, or two leaders before, but it's also because there's a worldwide acceptance from Klal Yisrael. Okay. Ben Shloshim, let's continue. Ben Shloshim Shana David b'Malcho, Arba'im Shana Malach. David was a ripe old 30-year-old when he became king, right? And he reigned for 40 years. The majority of his lifetime was spent as a king. The Chevron Malach al Yehuda Sheva Shanim v'Shisha Chadashim. Okay, now everyone here do the math. he was in Hebron for 7.5 years. And Yerushalayim, he was king for 33 years. Does that add up?
40.
7.5 and 33.
So it's over 40.
It's over 40. So the Mefarshim are troubled by this. No, if he's 40 years, and here it says 40.5 years. One pasuk later. So Mendy says it doesn't bother me because it's rounding. So a lot of the Mefarshim say the Torah does this, rounds.
When it says that he was the melech, does that mean when Shmuel came to tell him, or that's when he officially?
No, I think now.
We're talking now.
We're talking now.
So this whole time that he knew he was going to be, this was just
He's a young man.
Yeah.
Young, it's fine.
Yeah.
How long was he running away for? How old was he?
It's a few
He
years.
was running.
Few years. It wasn't so long. It was like a
But
year
he was
and a half,
very
2
young
years.
then.
What? He's a young guy. Yeah, young guy. Yeah. But again, I think, the lifespan was, actually, we don't know. I don't know. We'll see like how big life, but probably the average was 70. Yeah. So some of Farshim say just a simple rounding number, that's it. But others, the Abar Benel and Mitzudas David point out that there was 6 months, and we will unfortunately, we'll learn this unfortunate story. Fortunately, we will learn this story. That's why we're learning. Navi is that David was exiled from his kingdom for 6 months. So really, it wasn't, even though formally he was still king, he wasn't in his kingdom, in his palace, sitting on his throne for 6 months. His own son, exiled him, which we will learn about. And so maybe that is what is going on over here. Now, you're the king now, you're David HaMelech. What is your first order of business? What is the first thing you are going to do? What's your job? What's your role? What are you going to do? Unify. So it sounds like everyone's pretty unified, right? They came to him, all 12 tribes, the Zakanim, the politics, and also they know him. This is not a new guy off the street. That Shaul, right? Just to compare, Shaul needed to prove himself, right? And it was only when there was a war and he rallied people together, that's when he's able to really prove himself as king. What?
What's the story with the Plishtim now? Where are they at?
So the Plishtim are not mentioned. That's a good point. Maybe the first thing would be to wage war to really subdue the Plishtim and show them who's boss.
Wasn't he very well known and popular after this whole incident with Goliath?
Yes. No, so he is well known. He doesn't necessarily need to prove himself as king as other people would, right? That's like a big thing. We're in, it feels like we never leave presidential elections anymore. Like we're always in a presidential election cycle. I don't know. And like sometimes someone pops up out of nowhere when you have like the first round of like 9 or 11 people that want to become president. And some of them you're like, oh, they were governor of Alabama. And this person was a mayor of that town. And we have like their credentials. And sometimes you have someone who's like, they woke up yesterday, and you're like, who are they? Right? They're your neighbor. Like, and you're like, you have to like actually know who they are. Yet they need to prove themselves sometimes a lot more than everybody else. So David doesn't need that. So what does David do? David goes to Yerushalayim. He very quickly knows, and he's aware that him having his capital in Hebron is not right. That is not the eternal capital city of the Jewish people. The eternal capital city of the Jewish people is Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. Says the Navi, Vayelech HaMelech V'Anashav Yerushalayim. But there was one problem, a big problem. It was called the Yevusi problem. The Jewish people were not successful in removing the Yevusim from the city of Yerushalayim. The Psukim clearly state this in Sefer Yoshua, that the Yevusim could not be driven out of Yerushalayim. Okay? This is stated twice in the Navi. First in Yoshua Tesvav, the Yevusim lived in Yerushalayim, and the children of the Bnei Yehuda couldn't drive them out of Yerushalayim. Okay. A few prakim later, not in Yoshua but in Shoftim, the Navi goes out of its way again and says, you know who couldn't drive the Yevusim out of Yerushalayim? The children of Binyamin. Binyamin? Wait, who has Yerushalayim? Yehuda or Binyamin? So there's a contradiction, Minei Ube, in the Psukim regarding who has the ownership over Yerushalayim, whose territory is that in. The Navi continues and says in Sefer Shoftim that I think when we began Sefer Shoftim, I said we're going to have to go back to this pasuk. It's in Perek Aleph of Sefer Shoftim. The Navi says that Yehuda fought against Yerushalayim to overcome it. And what they do, they set the whole city on fire. Did they conquer the city? Did they not conquer the city? So many Mefarshim address this question as to what's happening now relevant to that. So there are two approaches. One approach is that there's two parts of Yerushalayim. Yehuda has one and Binyamin has the other. Yehuda got their part, but the old city, which was maybe part of Binyamin's, stayed with them. And that's really the main place that we're talking about over here. And that still had the Yevusim living in. Others say, no, the entire city was still under Yevusi control. Yehuda burnt it down, but wasn't successful in taking it over. They wreaked a lot of havoc, but it didn't really help. Like, I think today, we took over certain cities, like Jabalaya is how you pronounce it, and we leave it, we retreat out, they come out of the ground, and to take it over again. And so this is not something new. This was happening even in those days. That is point number one. So that's what brings us here. And secondly, the ownership or the territory of Yerushalayim is purposely vague. Rabbi Bazak from the Gush suggests is purposely vague because it really belongs to everybody. Yerushalayim, the Gemara says, lo nechla kol hashvatim. Yerushalayim is supposed to belong to everyone. So the territory itself is like, it's unclear exactly who it belongs to. It might be part of it is this, part of it is that. Therefore, it becomes the capital city of the Jewish people and the place, the Makom HaMikdash. Again, this is predestined from the beginning of time. Adam Arishon is born on the Makom HaMikdash. Where that rock is today, that's where Adam was born. That's where Avram Avinu brought Yitzchak at the Akedah. That's where Cain and Hevel brought their original Korban, all on that Makom, right? Yaakov Avinu slept there, right? This is all that place. It's predestined way before. It doesn't have a territorial owner on purpose. So now David has a problem. How are we going to get rid of the Yevusim? It's not so simple. Yerushalayim is elevated. If you're in an elevated space, then you have the upper hand, you have the control. Right? When the Jewish people were fighting Lebanon in 1982, in that war, a big part of the war was who was going to take over. I forgot which mountain it was. It caused a lot of casualties amongst the Jewish people in Sahel as a result of them not having or being restrained by foreign countries and not taking over certain key places. So Yerushalayim has a key place, and that is itself. So what do you do? Vayomer LeDavid, the They said to David, Lo tavohena ki im hesircha ivrim v'apischem le'mor lo yavo David. The Yevusim send the following message, and this: don't come here unless you're ready to remove the ivrim. What's an iver? The blind, and the pischim, the lame. What in the world? What's going on here? Midrashim share that they had derogatory psalim that made fun of the Avos, namely Yitzchak and Yaakov. Yitzchak was blind. Yaakov was lame. He was, he limping after the fight with Esav. And they had these derogatory things, almost to say like, we have almost like a shtach to David HaMelech and to his people. Like, you can't get to us because we have these protection of these psalim. Others say, and this is something that, is literally happening today, who we're putting on the front lines? The blind people and the lame. You're going to go through them to kill us. This is going to be an international incident. We're going to report to the New York Times tomorrow that you killed innocent, disabled individuals, Jewish animal. How can you do that? Right? These tactics that are happening today are part of, right, our interaction with your enemy's friend. So what does David do? Again, different interpretations of what exactly this means. So, Vayakol David as Metzudat Sion, he ear David. So David first takes over Metzudat Sion. He takes a stronghold in Metzudat Sion. Not exactly sure where exactly these things are. There's a lot of very interesting articles and videos, architecturally and historically, in terms of archaeologically, not architecture, archaeologically, in terms of where these things are. David took over a tower called Metzudat Sion in Yerushalayim. That's not Migdal David today. That's more of a, I don't know where that came from, but that's more of a tourist location. Today, they just redid it apparently, but it's like a really nice show there. They put in like millions and millions of dollars. Okay, wonderful. But David now says the following. Vayavomer David bayomahu, kol make yevusi v'yiga betzinor, v'sapischem v'se'ivrim, snuye nefesh David. David says to his people, whoever is able to go into and attack the tzinor, and then subsequently go ahead and remove those that hate us, the pischim, the ivrim, and everyone else, right? Right? Whoever can do that is going to be my general. So who is going to do that? Okay, we're going to see that's going to be Yoav. Great. But what is the tzinor that we're referring to here? What's going on here? What is it, tzinor? I don't know what the word tzinor means in modern Hebrew. No? A tzinor is a pipe. It's associated with water. They have pipes those days, they have gutters. They had some water needed to get into Yerushalayim. The Abar now happens to translate this not as a pipe, but as a tower. But most Mefarshim express that what is happening here is that there was some type of underground waterway that helped water get into Yerushalayim. David knew this. And he said, the only way for us to win this battle is to go underneath and then have a surprise attack. And you'll have half the guys over here, half the guys over here. And we will win this. We will win the battle of Yerushalayim. Okay? Many understand that this tzinor today is what we call Bisman Hazeh, Warren's Pier. Familiar with Warren Shaft? No? Yes. Okay, there was a, I think from England, someone that came into Yerushalayim, I think at the 1800s. He came in and he was looking around. I was there. I was in Warren Shaft. I think it was Warren Shaft. I think so. We spoke about this this past summer, 1867, by Charles Warren. The shaft is comprised of a lower pool, a steep passage, diagonal shaft, an upright shaft of around 40 feet. And they've continued to do many different studies on this. And this brought water into Yerushalayim, only discovered in the 1800s. And many people feel this is the exact place as to where they can go today. Today, I think this is where it is. You can go to Ir David, which is right outside the Shar HaAshpot of right by the hotel. It's like a 2-minute walk from there. And Ir David is, I never went there before until this year. It was amazing. Amazing. We got a tour of Ir David. It was they every day they're literally discovering new things that are directly connected to the Navi. We were below ground. They have like interactive videos, so cool, with water throughout the entire thing. And that water is brought into Yerushalayim through the Megichon, which is already referenced to.
Took a tour. NATEP.
Oh, you guys did it. You guys did it on a video. Yeah, a video. Yeah. So this is where you see Tanakh and archaeology coming to life together. So David is saying, I know this exists. This is the way we're going to get into Yerushalayim and win this battle. That's exactly what happens. Vayeshe David v'mitzuda, and David himself, as like the king, is standing in the tower, in the mitzudas David. Vayikra la Ir David, and they eventually call this Ir David. This is probably the place where Ir David is today. That's like the location as to where the palace was and everything was. That's like the more political place where politicians came before they went to Har Habatz. Even David Savim in Mila Uvavaisa, David Haloch V'Gadol Hashem Alokei Tzvakos Imo, and they win this war. We don't even mention the details of this war. They win this battle and they overtake Yerushalayim, which is now stage 1. We're going to stop here, but this is going to be very, very important in David solidifying not just his reign, not getting the people, but now making the Jewish people themselves strong, right? And establishing Yerushalayim as the center. And if Yerushalayim is going to be the capital, then what are going to be David's next steps? He's going to want to build the Beis HaMikdash. And that's what we're going to see is David's goal. He's not going to, we know that's not going to happen, but this is what David is laying the groundwork for. I wish everybody a